All right. Before we get started, I just would like to again say thank you to everyone. We're getting ready to transition to the new Kuali IRB protocols, which is why you're all here this morning. And so we'll just get started. I guess I would like to mention that we do have Claire Chan. She's going to be helping out with this presentation this morning. We also have Angie Chromiak, who's a relatively recent addition to the RICRO IRB office. So she'll also be helping out with the transition and the migration. Of course, Tammy is Felton Oils here also. So again, thank you all. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen in just a second. I need to move the presentation over here. Again, good morning. Can you all see the screen here? The Kuali protocols PowerPoint?
I don't see it, Zach.
Okay. All right, one more shot. Now do you have it, Claire?
It's working on it, yes.
All right. So good morning again. We have a couple slides here just to sort of talk about this transition and sort of go into a little bit of detail about what we're going to do. And then I'm going to also go into the sandbox of our environment and walk through a protocol as we sort of do the submission process. And then also show you a protocol that we also have developed in the sandbox to sort of show you again some of the comments or the review process or so how that is going to work. So if you do have any questions, feel free to raise a hand or ask at any time. So a little bit of background just about Kuali and Colorado State. We've had a relatively long history, Kuali CSU going back 10 or 12 years or so. They've helped us develop some software programs, and we continue to help them develop software programs. On the next point here, we currently have some what we would call locally hosted programs, including Kuali Financials and the Export Control Module. I mentioned the Export Control Module just because we have developed that module in-house and are currently exporting part of that module to Kuali. They're going to take that, work on it, and then export it back to us. So you'll see in the next bullet point that we some cloud-based programs that Kuali has or we have. So conflict of interest, we went live with the Kuali cloud-based COI in June of 2019. We went live with the cloud-based protocols for the animal care and use April of 2020. And as you know, we're going live April 2021. We also have an IBC module that is in the development through Kuali that we're hoping to implement at some point, possibly this year, but most likely 2022. I have down there export control, and as I mentioned, our research services team has been working on an export control module. We have offloaded some of that to Kuali, and they're going to continue to implement that, develop that, and then we should see that export control module in a cloud-based system at some point. Again, whether that's 2021 or 2022 is yet to be determined. And then the last thing I did want to mention is that we are currently hosting, locally hosting the Kuali Financials. We're going to tentatively, I'll put down December of 2021, release a cloud-based Kuali Financials system that will be significantly different than the current financial system. Because it also is a cloud-based system, we will have, in theory, integration with all of the modules that you see above that. So IRB, IACUC, and COI will all be live by the time we go live with Kuali Financials. And so don't have time to get into a lot of the specifics on that today, but what that will mean, again, is that we will have a lot of integration within the systems and should make for a lot of easier administration for a lot of folks. So talk a little bit about the IRB transition. So our current system is eProtocol. In order to allow for protocols to be migrated over into the new system, we're going to restrict researcher access on March 19th. And so, as I mentioned beforehand, and we will be then migrating all active protocols in the eProtocol system over to Kuali by the RCRO staff by our go live date, which is estimated to be April 2. So this means that we're going to take every expedited, full board, and exempt protocol, and we're going to re-enter them into the new system, which you will see here shortly. And then, as you can see on the next point there, any study that did not require initial review, so NHSR, will be migrated later, and we'll do that either on a rolling basis or at the researcher's request. So as a researcher, what do you need to do? Well, most studies require no action. We'll continue to be in communication with you. We'll have more information up on the IRB website, but we would ask that you could close your study in eProtocol if you are completed with it. That sort of makes sense. But if you've completed all your interventions and no longer need access to that specific information, we would request that you close it so that we don't have to try to transition it over. The only other comment that I would make is that as we are transitioning these or migrating these protocols over, it's obviously going to be a significant workload for the IRB office and the RCRO office. And so if you do get communication with us, just appreciate, your timely response. Nothing that you wouldn't expect. Again, what will happen with eProtocol access? We're going to restrict that access to the researchers on March 19th. We will have some availability to access after that date. However, our contract with eProtocol expires at the end of the fiscal year. And so we will not have a direct access to any of the records or data directly. And so that's sort of an ongoing process here. And if you do have questions, you can reach out to the IRB office for some help there. Again, just a little bit more about the migration. One of the things that we're going to do is we're going to migrate over the legacy protocol number into a field on there. So that way we'll be able to cross-reference the current Kuali protocol with the legacy protocol. And I did just put them up there. All protocols that we're going to come over in Kuali system, we're just going to start with number 1, 2, and sort of go up from there. We're about 15 or 1600 in the iCook system currently. But we're just going to start counting up. More information is going to be available on the RCRO IRB Kuali website. I don't know if that page is active yet this morning, but we will have a help page up on the IRB site that will talk a little bit more about some of the differences between eProtocol and Kuali, talk a little bit about the transition time frame, talk a little bit more also about the current protocol migration process, talk about a little bit about some of the things I've already talked about here, determination after the end of the calendar year. We will also have requests for training. So if members of your group or colleagues were unable to attend the PDI this morning, they can view this recording or they can complete a training request, and I will work with you or your group to make sure that you're comfortable with this new system. All right. I just wanted to say thank you to that.
We do have one question in the chat, Zach.
Okay.
I want to just address that first. Asking about what is the impact of these transitions on all protocols that are being developed? And that's a really good question. So basically, with the transition period that Zach laid out, the idea is that eProtocol won't be accepting new submissions once we put that freeze on in the middle of March, and that any submission coming in after that point would have to come into the Kuali system starting on April 2nd. So there is going to be kind of a window of time where everything is on pause. If you think that your project can be submitted before the 19th of March, absolutely get it into eProtocol. If you think that it's not going to be ready, we can definitely work with you to either have some access to the layout of the new form or talk about what it looks like to maybe be part of a soft opening or something like that. So if you have a project that you think is going to be ready right at that threshold time, please reach out to us at the IRB and we'll talk it through.
Okay, and I do see another question up there from Tammy. The IRB page, the IRB help page will be, or the help page will be on the IRB page. So when you click onto the RCRO page and you click on IRB, there will be a header at the top that says, click here to go to the help page. I can also put a header up on the main RCRO page to redirect folks also. So I'm going to make a note to myself to go ahead and do that also. So I'll go ahead and add a note on the RCRO header page also to redirect folks. Any other questions? All right, I'll go back to sharing my screen here. Claire, can you see the Kuali screen?
Yep, looks good.
All right. So I've got going to do a couple things here this morning, as I mentioned. One, I'm going to go through a brand new protocol with you all, just sort of start a protocol as you would, sort of take our time with this a little bit, but probably not complete this process. And then I'm going to also show you an additional protocol that has had a little bit of interaction. Again, we're in the sandbox here, so it's had some artificial interaction. And so I'm going to impersonate someone. So if you see this up on the screen here, again, we're in the sandbox. So this is, as I mentioned, we're going to have sort of an integrated Kuali system at some point, either late 2021 or sometime in 2022 as far as financials. So this system is not live in here. You can see the conflict of interest. And if you all have completed your conflict of interest, which I know you all have, you would have then used this Kuali cloud-based system. And now we have, in here, we also have protocols. Most of you would not expect to have some of these other options on here, but so if we click into the protocols screen, I'm logged in here as Tricia Callahan. And so this will show you sort of your dashboard of protocols that you have developed. So it says manage protocols. If you are an administrator or have some reviewer access, you would have maybe additional fields on the left-hand side. But for most of you, this is sort of what you will see. We click here, we can click on new protocol, and this would then pull up a window that we could do an ICOOC protocol again in the sandbox or IRB protocol. And so as I mentioned, this is going to be an integrated system. So if you were in theory doing both human and animal research, you would both do this through the same portal. If you had an IBC protocol and we were live with IBC, you would also do this through this same sort of portal. They're going to look entirely different, but you'll at least start on the same page. From inside of here, you can see we have a title for all the protocols that you have done, a number, and again, these are just assigned sequentially, a PI name. Again, we've just been playing around in the sandbox, so we have there a review type, status, an assignment, a continuing review date. We also have in here the ability to sort of filter. So if I had a significant number of protocols in here and I just wanted to see which one involved canine, I could search canine, equine, vulpine, lupine, and those would then come up. That way we can also do advanced filters and search throughout here. And this gets very, very involved and is probably more practical for an administrator or for someone that has a significant number of protocols. But I did want to point out that you can select by a significant number of fields And we are still in the sandbox with this. Once we go live in production, these fields will then expound. So that way you can, again, filter if you wanted to by any number of different fields that are actually in the actual protocol. But if you wanted to, do all those by status that were equal to submitted for review, you could then save a filter that says saved for review, and look at your saved filters and just select which ones you want from here, and then they would then populate or appear. You can also manage columns, so if you wanted to have additional columns appear to then sort or filter by to make it easier, you can do so. And this is all sort of what we would then call, Kuali doesn't call this the dashboard section, but this is what I would then call the dashboard, to again, where you can see your protocols. If you click on them, it's going to take you directly into the protocol. So, all right. But enough about that. So again, we're going to start with this process here with sort of going through an initial protocol submission or development. And if you do have questions, Claire, if you could just let me know or something, since I'm in here, I can't see the comments.
Will do.
Thank you. So we have here a principal investigator. And so we can enter, these fields have been populated by the HR feed. So we can pull folks from campus here. And we select a lead unit. I'm going to put up here, just to mention this, if I start with PB, we have some smart fields in here. And again, we're in the sandbox, so we're going to have some glitches occasionally. I do apologize for some of that. But I did want to mention that we're also in development with Pueblo. So if you do type in PB, you will see a bunch of Pueblo offices in here. And if you select a Pueblo lead unit, you will get the Pueblo IRB form. If you select Pueblo as a lead unit, mistakenly, you could get the Pueblo IACUC form if that wasn't what you were in here for. So just be certain that you're, make sure that when you choose biology, that you do not choose one that says PB. And then click a title. Select next. And one of the things that I'd like to point out that's much different from Kuali protocols is e-protocols is progressive logic. So you can see we have nothing else on this form here, but it's asking me to select an application type. So if I'm going to sort of think that maybe it's not human subjects review, I'm going to put NHSR. If I want to put exempt, I can click exempt. But now that I notice, once I've clicked exempt, the progressive logic has asked me then, has popped up with some additional questions that I need to then answer. If I put down expedited, you can see that these questions now have changed. So as I mentioned, the progressive logic, this is just sort of in the initial questionnaire, general questionnaire, but once we get into the actual protocol, we will see this throughout the protocol as well. So application type, we'll do a full board, and I'm not going to read all of the questions, but I will take a little bit of time. So this one is asking if we're going to function as the lead IRB or single IRB for collaboration, and I'm going to put no, we're not going to collaborate. Existing biospecimens, no. Student records, no. Human blood cells or tissues, yes. No to a DME, no. So this would then maybe pull up additional questions, and so we'll see this also. Is this a clinical trial? So maybe we get some FDA integration into this. PHI, it is not a thesis or other class project, and it is funded. And then again, if I did click up here and decide that now that I've read through some of these questions, maybe I'm not really sure about what this is. If I think that maybe it's expedited, if I were to click on expedited, my answers would then go away and I would get different questions in some sets. But not to belabor the point, we can just move forward on this, click next. And this is the protocol screen that you sort of saw briefly as I was pulling this up. And this is the exact same screen that you would see for a protocol in the IACUC system. So it currently says Kuali at the top. We are working to get that changed to put the CSU logo in there. But you can go back, and it takes you right back into the protocols. And you can see now there's that protocol that I just started is now listed in my list of protocols. I can click back onto it. If I look on the left-hand side, this is the table of contents for my protocol. So these are all the sections that I have, again, for a full board protocol. If I would have chosen exempt or expedited, the table of contents on the left-hand side would look different. Anything with a green checkbox, in theory, that section is complete. Anything without a green checkbox or check mark, as you can see, that section would then be incomplete. I can click directly on a section down here, procedures, and it's going to take me directly into the procedures section. But let's just go back up to the top of the protocol before we get too far forward. We're also able to view versions of protocols. And so this one is, new or in progress. So we only have one version of it. The second one that I have, you will see we have multiple versions of. And so you can click on the caret over here and you can drop down and actually view previous versions. And again, we'll show that in the subsequent demonstration here, portion of this. So we have general information. This is what I entered earlier, Karen Dobus. And again, I just chose a unit at random. This is the people section, so you can see that here. We have people, and there it entered Karen Dobus automatically as the PI is what I had entered. And then because the administrator, I'm logged in as Tricia Callahan, it's going to say that Tricia Callahan is an admin. She is now also on this protocol. If I want to add additional personnel to this protocol, I simply can click add line. And now you'll see we have a completely sort of different pop-up here that's going to pop up in the middle of the screen. And again, we sort of have this type ahead function here. So I've chosen Ron Splitgerber. Some of the information on some of these screens is going to be mandatory. Some of them is not. I'm not going to enter a home unit or a phone number. I'm going to say that Ron is staff. But what you do notice, and as I mentioned, some fields are going to be required and some fields are not. We have a red box around these two fields, and you also see this little note here. It says at least one role is required. So because I added Ron to this protocol, it's saying, is Ron a researcher or is Ron not a researcher and just have a contact role? So I'm going to add Ron as a contact role, and I'm going to say that he is the admin for this, and he should have read-only access. So what this means is if you have folks in your labs that you would want to have access to the protocol system to be able to read it, look at it, that sort of thing, you can obviously give them read-only access, and they are not able to make any changes to the protocol. If I wanted to add a training record, we can add training records here. So I can click on add info and just sort of very simply drag a file, put the file in there. If we wanted to put this as an attachment type, I can list what attachment type it would be there. This is, again, we're getting a little bit off of the side here, but I did want to show you some of the things that can happen within the nuances of this system as we're going through that. Another thing that is new that we hope to have outlined and developed by the time we go live is a training widget within the system. So you can see here it says Ron Splitgerber has no training courses on file. We're attempting to integrate this with City and with some of our other locally hosted trainings. And so those trainings would then appear right in this window here. So I'm going to add one other folk. I'm going to add Alan Akers, just because Alan is the one that's working on the widget for us over in Research Services. And now underneath training, you can see that Alan Akers has the training that's listed. So again, these are just totally made up, but he's completed a city training and it has some expiration dates. His COI training also is completed, but his export controls training is currently now expired. So when I mentioned the integration that we will at some point have within the system, this is what I'm talking about. Financials will be able to look at conflict of interest without having to exit another system entirely. You can look at protocols and vice versa. You'll be able to look at your financials without having to exit and go into a bunch of other systems. And as you can see here, we have home unit, researcher role. I could sort and filter these if I so decide. If I decide, you know what, Ron is no longer, I entered him by mistake, I can just click on the garbage can and then Ron is going to be taken off of this. If I want to edit this information, I can click on the pencil here and say that Tricia is also going to be a co-investigator on this. So now you can see I've added her as a co-investigator on this field. Here's the general questionnaire that we sort of already answered. Now you can see that it's sort of been integrated into this protocol system or protocol itself. And if you look on the left-hand side, then the table of contents indicates that study participants would then be the next study participants that we would include. Claire, I forgot to, was there anything else you wanted to talk about in the personnel section?
No, I don't think so. I think you covered it. We do have one question, though, that I thought maybe we could address before we move on too far. Can you talk a little bit about access to the system, if people need to be logged into VPN, kind of where they can find the links to this, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. So that is, I would, as the former conflict of interest officer on campus, I can tell you that that was a horrible problem for a lot of folks working remotely to try to use the VPN to access the system. It's a cloud-based system. You can access it anywhere. In theory, you can complete your conflict of interest on your cell phone. The protocol system, again, in theory, should work, but it doesn't anywhere near this at this point. But yes, tablets, iPads, laptops, you will be able to access this system remotely without having to use a VPN.
Great, thanks. And then just one other question that came up, or at least a comment, I guess, is that some individuals have red or green color blindness. What kind of control do we have over the design principles as far as the colors being used?
I do not want to get on a soapbox this morning, but we have none at this point. I make requests. In fact, Kuali changed that to where we have black font on the right-hand side, blue font on the left-hand side, and green check marks. And I jumped up and down at a meeting that we had back in November when they changed this, and they said they would sort of look into it. I have no idea why they've changed the font to not even match, but we have none. I have mentioned this through Elaine as far as the ADA issue and readability issues, and so hopefully that will get some movement on Kuali. I don't want to lay blame all on them because with the holidays and stuff, things have been delayed, but at this point, we do not have any option to change the font color. On the sidebars, anything in the middle, I shouldn't say anything, but this text here, we can change coloration on this stuff, this fields, but anything on the margins on the right or left-hand side, we have no control over. Similar to sort of these things within the form itself, no control over any of this.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes. So study participants, Claire did a fantastic job of taking the current system in E protocol, or the current module in E protocol, and we've transitioned the form over, massaged it quite a bit to make it work much more nicely. But you will see some similarities, again, between the sort of two protocol systems. So we're just going to select adults. If I did want to select children or minors, we could do so. Collaborators, if I select yes to this, now I'm going to, I said, I already answered this question once before, and I said, no, it's not going to collaborate. So as I mentioned, within the progressive logic of this, or smart logic to a certain extent, it says you answered no to this question earlier. Are you sort of thinking about changing your mind? Oh, I answered that mistakenly, so no, it's not a collaborative project. If I go back here and click yes, though, you can see that that came back up. And now we also have a link here to some information about Smart IRB and some participating organizations. And we can actually add that information within the system. And again, we're in the sandbox here, so I don't think we have too many organizations that are in there. But again, in theory, once we get this developed, you would be able to then pull this information. If you couldn't find it, you can click here and just sort of add it manually. But just to make sure that I'm clean and don't have a bunch of mistakes and errors, I'm going to put no, this is not a collaborative project. We go into the funding source, ask questions about where the funding was secured, some dates. This is the Kuali calendar pop-up or calendar widget. Again, I'm not going to get on a sandbox. It's been a notice or an item of contention within the users and Kuali, and I expect this to change in the near future, but it's been like this for a while. If you're trying to select 2023, you sort of have to go through this process to select 2023, and then so it's a little cumbersome, and I expect Kuali to make some changes on this, but I don't have an exact date on that. But you can see that we have sort of a summary and purpose. We've got some dates there. I'm just going to copy and paste some text in here so that we don't get significant errors as we're going through the project. But as you can see, we've have a brief summary or abstract, general purpose, what do you hope to learn from it, how sharing the results. And again, if we look on the left-hand side now, we're in this background or additional procedures, some relevant background information, talk a little bit about your expertise, and then so these are just sort of text-based fields. So you can enter information in here as you would like. Prescription or the procedure text. Where and when. And again, some of the fields are not going to require. So you see, I put a location, but I didn't put a date. And so I'm not going to get an error on this. We do not have a specific field that's going to require you to put a date on this. And I'm just going to and then will deception be used as part of this? So as I mentioned, we have progressive logic even within some of these pop-ups. So if I select no, you can see there's nothing below this field. But if I select yes, now I get an additional line that pops up even within this window here that says you need to talk a little bit about why you're doing deception, your justification for it. And because of that, now I also have this additional field that popped up that asks me to explain in more detail how subjects will authorize then the use of deception. Some privacy and confidentiality. And so biospecimens.
And I'm just going to add in here, since we talked about this earlier, Zach. So on the initial questionnaire, Zach chose the option that he was using biospecimens for this project. And that's the only reason that this section is showing up in his protocol at all. So in the case that he had chosen no for biospecimens on his initial questionnaire, this section wouldn't even be visible. So it just kind of helps. The sections on the left only show up as needed based on what you're doing.
Very good point, Claire. And as so, if you did click biospecimens by mistake and you're like, well, I don't have any biospecimens, I click no, you can go back up into your protocol. And if I click no, now you can see that biospecimen section is gone. So as I mentioned, we have, sort of smart or progressive logic throughout the form that will make it smaller or larger depending on your answers to the question. Thanks a bunch, Claire. So participant population, interacting, intervening. So we have please list all inclusion criteria. Going to exclude Alan from our study. And then we could add our screening questionnaire here. And again, I can just click add attachment. I can view the file, I can replace the file, I can just delete the file. Talk a little bit more about the recruitment process. Compensation. And again, if I answered yes, the participant's going to incur cost, I get an additional question. Oh, I did that by mistake. Risks and benefits. Psychological, economic. We have a section here that talks about data management. And again, any link that would be in blue throughout the form itself, it's going to be a hot link. So I can click here and this would then take us directly out to the library management plan. Get information on that. Except we're in the sandbox, so sometimes we get a little glitch with some stuff here. Try to reload my page here and see what's going to happen. As I mentioned, you can just click on the left-hand side on your table of contents. And as we're going through the sections, you can also see here now that on the table of contents, we're getting these check marks filled in. Well, so again, we just sort of finished up with this data management section. The next section that you can see is consent and assent. Have some information about consent. Will informed consent be obtained? Yes. Waiver of documentation? No. It's going to list consent process. I can just continue to add lines if I so decided there. So again, within these pop-up fields, we have additional sections that you can tag to activate.
And Zach, do you want to talk about the autosave as you go?
Oh, yeah.
You highlight the pop-up there?
Yeah, I was going to say, oh, there it is. I was going to say, I hadn't really noticed, but as you're going through the protocol, they auto save. So you do not have to worry about saving or doing anything. You know, if I were to click back, you saw I reloaded that page just a couple seconds ago when I was having an error. But because it's cloud-based and because we do have an auto save, we really generally don't have any problems with that. I haven't had anyone that I can think of actually have a problem with the autosave while they were working on something not function properly.
Is there an option for us to save as we go? Is there a save button anywhere?
No, there is not a save yet. One thing I noticed as I was going through here is that, well, I'm going to go ahead and delete this and see what happens. I'll just keep moving forward. Come back to consent and assent. We have a conflict of interest section. So again, we have a link within here to take you directly to the conflict of interest page if you had questions about that. And then at the end of this section, or the end of the protocol here, you can see we're sort of almost at the end. We finished consent and assent, conflicts of interest. We don't get check marks next to those necessarily if there's nothing that would be applicable that needs to be filled in. So if there was no COI. And so we can see in the attachment section here. And the one thing that is different, a little different with this, as I mentioned, is that once I click add attachment, it's going to ask me to select which type of attachment I'm going to add. So this will allow you to upload the specific attachment that you would want, have an attachment type, so that way it's easy for both you and the administrators to locate these on the protocols. We have some information about your obligations and certification. So at this point, I feel like that I'm sort of maybe would be done with this protocol. Hit submit. I'm gonna have to reload, Claire. We're having, oh, there we go. Some reason the submit button is graying out this morning. Apologize for this. I'm going to have, like I said, we're in the sandbox, so sometimes we get little glitches in the system. I should have been able to submit this protocol. And now it's just not letting me move forward.
Well, as you say, taking a look at that. I do just want to mention that, as Zach said, this is overall going to look very similar to what you've seen in eProtocol. A lot of the questions will read the same or ask some of the same information. I think the biggest differences that you'll see are going to be related to privacy and confidentiality and data management. So we've kind of revamped how we're collecting data from you guys in those realms right now to get more consistent information from researchers and really understand how you're managing data. And the links and guidance from CSU libraries is going to be a big resource for you to just kind of organize how you're going to maintain data and all kind of the details about de-identification or, just confidentiality and secure data management. So that'll be a little bit different, but for the most part, the rest of the questions should look pretty similar. Does anybody have any questions right now that you want to throw out there for us about the form itself or how it's functioning? No? My other IRB coordinators, do either of you have things that you want to add, Angie or Tammy, about the process or data that we're collecting through the form or anything like that?
Tammy, this is Tammy Claire. Sorry about that. I wanted to actually ask if you wanted to give a little more background on our focuses with regards to data management and data privacy moving forward. One of the reasons is we're trying to streamline other units in our resources at CSU and better navigate you as the researchers and understanding where those resources are at. But Claire, I didn't know if you wanted to kind of speak a little bit more about IRB concerns with regards to data privacy moving forward, and all community concerns with regards to data privacy moving forward, and why we're streamlining that a little bit more in the Kuali protocol.
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, privacy and confidentiality are always an important part of IRB review. Just making sure that we really understand that participants know what kind of data you're going to collect, have some control over how you have access to that data or have access to them in general, but also that they really understand how you're going to protect data that they give to you for their, for research purposes. That can range all the way from a survey response, an interview. You could be collecting data that was used for another purpose or health-related data, anything like that. And, different levels of, or different kinds of data kind of need different levels of protection and carry different levels of risk. And that's a really big topic with IRBs right now, with kind of a changing reality of how identifiable people can become just based on the tools that are out there, big data and computing and just the, the availability for people to re-identify records that may have been de-identified in the past has gotten a lot of focus from IRB. So we like to know exactly how you're going to de-identify data, how you're going to store it, what kind of information you want to keep and for what purpose, so that we can really inform participants well about how you're using their data and what they can expect as far as privacy goes and confidentiality moving forward. And also kind of tying into this push towards open science, where people want to post their raw data to a repository or something like that. We also like to know that might happen and kind of give participants a really good idea about what that means. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Tammy, or kind of expand?
Sorry, just trying to find my mute button, of course. No, I don't have anything more. I appreciate you kind of going back a little bit. I just want folks to understand that this is an ongoing and will continue to grow as a concern not only for IRBs, but for institutions and researchers and your participants as well. And so we want to make sure that we're collecting the right data, that we're asking the right questions and streamlining it in a manner that's understandable for you as the researcher and trying to develop your protocol. So we hope that's really helpful. Thank you, Claire.
Sure.
Thanks, Claire. Any other questions from anyone?
We do have a question that just came in. Can researchers practice in the Kuali Sandbox? And if so, where can they find that link?
Definitely. They can contact myself and I will send them the link to do that. If you want to, you can just type in that link right there at the top. Claire, can you see the Kuali screen again?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So this right here is the URL for our sandbox. You do not need any special privileges to go in there and do anything with it. Obviously, it's live now. You can't make any mistakes in there, so feel free to fool around. You can play around in the COI system if you really want. You can follow around in the iCook system if you would really like to. But yeah, definitely go in there. The only thing that I would ask is if you do go in there, do not, I sort of didn't do what I would ask you all to do. You don't have to enter any full text. But the only thing that I would ask is that you just don't enter gibberish like what I've just entered there, the CASD, blah, blah, blah. As we continue to do testing, if you enter gibberish in there, I really don't know if gibberish was entered or if we're having a problem with our migration or with our process here. So again, you do not need to enter full text in any field. You can see that I copied and pasted information, and feel free to do that as well also, because obviously that's been cut and pasted. But gibberish is just one thing that we're really not sure if that's gibberish or if there's an error. I tried to enter an exponential number in one of these text fields, and Kuali doesn't like that. So as I mentioned, if you enter gibberish sometimes, Kuali will try to do something with it, translate it, but it doesn't work so well. But yes, absolutely feel free to fool around in the sandbox, so to speak. And again, the submit button is grayed out. I have not seen this before. I have no check marks that are undone, so we're just having an issue right now with the sandbox, but that's fine. I'm finished with what I needed to finish as far as that protocol. The only thing I was going to show you is that if you attempt to submit it early, let's pretend that I did have it completed and hit submit. It would circle, it would put a red box around the field, and you would get a pop-up warning that would sort of appear right here that would say you have one field left incomplete. If I had 15 fields, it would say you have 15 fields, and each field would have a red box around it. So if I just sort of randomly go through and start deleting stuff, you would then see that I would start getting problems in various sections to where I couldn't submit it, and I would be requiring to get information. So, but again, we're having a glitch. I don't want to belabor that point. But what I do want to show you again is a protocol that we've had a little bit of pretend back and forth with in the sandbox. So if I look underneath the status for my protocols, here this one says revisions in progress. So what this tells me is that it was submitted to the administrators. They looked at it, said you need to have some revisions. And it was submitted back or sent back to me. And I am in progress with these revisions. And as you can see, this is protocol number 463 PDI test protocol. Here it says version 3, new revisions in progress. I can click here and I can look at the very first protocol, the very first version that was submitted. So underneath here, this first version, I have 3 users. Again, some random CSU user, myself, and Alan. If I go back up here to version 3, It shows CSU, myself, Alan, and now I've also added Tricia, but also you see that now next to myself, I have an action item, which was not there before. The versions maybe are not quite as helpful, or they're helpful if you need them to sort of go back through and look at information. The show latest changes, I don't know if that's going to be there once we go live. Kuali had talked about removing that because it wasn't really super effective with the way they had it. So I do not know if show latest changes is going to show up on the version that you will see once we go live or not. I was looking to see if they had, anyway, the show latest changes, again, may or may not be apparent. What it did used to do was anything that was changed would show up in green, and the old versions would be crossed out in red. Again, there were some questions about visibility and stuff, so Kuali had took that back to the drawing board, and I haven't seen anything subsequently. So we may see something by April. If we look at our table of contents, again, you can see our check marks, but here we have sort of these circles that indicate 1 or 2. Kuali has, instead of calling them comments, they call them action items. And so you can see here that there's an action item with a little highlight, and it says it has a counter next to it. And so if I click on 1, the action item or comment now pops out from the side. And this was relevant to this section. So describe how sharing blah, blah, blah could be. So there was a comment from a reviewer, and the comments are made anonymous. You can see a date and a time. How do you intend to share the outcomes from this research? And it was visible to both the administrators and the researchers. And so I didn't show you that from an administrator perspective, but you can make comments visible to either the administrators or the researchers. And then I can see the reply from an anonymous person. They're going to share it with the source. So we can see that an action item was a question or comment was brought up. It was responded to. I can now close this. If I go back down to procedures, I can see that we have 2 action items here. We have one in this section and one in this section. And again, a similar date later on in the day. It says, please expand, and then we show the reply. And again, we could sort of continue this if there was a continual conversation. Within that, that would be apparent. You could have dialogue sort of going on and on. It also shows you sort of the current time and current status, the status itself. Review type is nowhere. One of the things that I didn't mention when I was sort of initially going over the protocol was these tabs at the top, which get a little lost until you sort of play around in that. So we are on the protocol tab, and you can see again, the blue line designates, again, won't get on the soapbox, that we're in the protocol section. If I click on activity log, you can see this line is now moved underneath this activity log section. And the activity log section is very, very helpful. It shows you exactly what it says, what has happened with this protocol as it's made its way through the process. So we had a version, it was submitted, it was sent back to require revisions, a new version was submitted, required revisions again, and now we're on the 3rd version. And then also we'll see a change here that Karen Dobus was granted read-only permissions. And this is also something that's additional, that's new to this system, which is also very nice. So this 3rd tab is permissions. So if you had someone that you wanted to have access to the protocol, and I don't know that the researchers or you would use this maybe quite as often, but we can give direct permission to a user for this protocol and this protocol only, in a read only. So if I wanted Tracy Webb, if I wanted Tracy Webb to have read-only access on this, I wanted her to look at this for some clinical review process, I can then just grant Tracy, and again, this is an administrator or researcher privilege. This is not carte blanche, but we can go in here and without adding Tracy then to the protocol, I can give her access to view this protocol if she needed to review it for if I wanted her to edit it or look at any of that information. But the activity log, again, now shows that Tracy Webb was given permission by Tricia Callahan at this date and time.
We've got a question coming in about that. Can you submit a research contact who's not affiliated with CSU here?
The answer to that is currently no. They would need to be in a system, and so they would need to be an affiliate. We're still, this has also been relatively new. This was rolled out right before the holidays hit. So we haven't had a lot of chance to play around with this, but at this point, it's only CSU employees. But again, anyone with an affiliate record or an EID could also be put in here. All right. We can look at, again, we have a couple more options here now on the side. So you can see that I still logged in here as Tricia. We have an action item summary. So this is a nice little pop-up that shows you all of the action items on this protocol. And we also have a section called general action items. So general action items, they would stay with every version of the protocol as opposed to sort of being versioned with a protocol. So I just put test for comments. And again, we can have this visible to the administrator, any assigned reviewers, or the researcher, and I marked it as resolved. So it was marked as resolved. If I want to resubmit it, I can just go ahead and resubmit the protocol. Refresh my page. And now you can see that I'm on version 3 resubmitted. If I go into the activity log, it says that it's been resubmitted. If I go back to my dashboard, it shows that it's been resubmitted. So if I want to look at protocols that I have revisions in progress, something that I'm supposed to be working on, I can sort of filter the status to do that. If I want to look at those that I've resubmitted but haven't gotten an answer back yet on, maybe I can filter that way. If I want to look at those that are in progress but not have anything done to them, I can do so. There was one additional thing that I wanted to show you, and it's not letting me do it, is that user. So I'm going to Any questions, Claire, before I just wanted to show this this a little bit more. Oh, okay. James says that I chose CSU not reviewing the protocol. Okay. Let's see what we have here. So as I mentioned, I know that we have folks on here that have additional responsibilities. So as a reviewer, you may have a protocol that's been assigned to you or has an event assigned to you that you would then need to review. So when I was logged in as Tricia, you did not see any of these other options underneath there. You saw manage protocols and basically a hide menu. You didn't even see this sort of what I called her dashboard. Is not what Kuali calls a dashboard, but you can look at protocols that were assigned to you. This is the only protocol that was assigned to me as Zach Callahan. I can look at the events that have been assigned to me if there was a reportable event that had been assigned to me. I can go back into manage protocols. I can also then just pull any protocol up that I would sort of want to see. And I was trying to pull an approved protocol. So this is, as I mentioned, right, this is an approved protocol. And so also it's an ICOOC protocol. So I don't want to have any differences here, but you can see that the forms are going to look very, very similar. We still have protocols at the top. We have an activity log at the top, and we have permissions at the top. As I mentioned, we're in the sandbox here, so maybe having some permissions issue with the sandbox. But what I wanted to show you was the activity log for this approved protocol. Within these approved protocols now, you will actually be able to see the emails that have been submitted or sent to you as a researcher. A little messy still, as I mentioned, in the sandbox, so some of this stuff doesn't look very well, but it says only shown in test mode. Sort of goes on about this sort of stuff, and it says that you submitted it, which is again a notification that you would not see. We see assigned to reviews, assigned to committees, it was approved. And then this is sort of what I mentioned. So this is the email. This is an exact copy of an email that you would have received once that protocol was approved on June 24th at 12:34. So Elaine would have received this email that says subject, was approved. Here's the body of the text. And the approval number, well, again, don't have the approval numbers in place on this system here, but the approval number would show up on the email that would have been sent to you. We have a link directly to the protocol within the email itself also. So sort of we have a little bit of redundancy built into the system, but it allows you to then go into the activity log tab and look at the correspondence that was submitted, and you can see the actual email that was sent with that date. So within the protocol itself, you won't have to go back through and look through your email to see if you've got an approval number or a date or any of that sort of information. You can look through right at the activity log to see how that's working out. Permissions, as I mentioned, we've already sort of seen, and I shouldn't have clicked there because we're having some issues with the permissions in the sandbox. We have reportable events, as I mentioned. We can report adverse events. We have not added this yet into the IRB module. We also have ancillary review that we could add. So if we did want to add an ancillary reviewer as a group, whether that's the Cannabis and Hemp Research Advisory Council or other folks on campus, the Radiation Safety Committee, we could add that group as an ancillary reviewer. Again, still work in progress in the sandbox, but hope to have a lot of that stuff fleshed out by the time we start to go live in April. Additionally, we see, again, all these check marks. I'm logged in as the administrator, so I have some additional options on the side here. I can review assignments, I can suspend, I can close this. And then obviously we have renew and amend. Claire, was there anything else that you want me to talk about? I know we're kind of not getting close up on time, but a little close, and there were a couple things that you thought you wanted to mention.
This is great. It's super helpful, I think, to take a look at the system and just get an idea about what it's going to look like and kind of the general function. So that's really the main thing that I wanted all of you to see, is just kind of get a feel for it and understand our next steps. But, as the IRB team here on the call, we would love to get your questions and feedback so that we can create FAQs or, do small edits, that kind of thing that make this easier, an easier process, or make sure that communication is clear. So I'd love to open the floor up a little bit and just see if we can get some input from some listeners, if anybody is willing. Maybe not sounding like a lot of questions at this point, but still feel free to jump in if you have any. But I guess the other thing I'll highlight is that, like Zach said, we're going to have a website up and running here very soon that has details about the transition, and we'll be updating it as we go, and trying to incorporate all the information that you guys are asking for. Oh, good. So I do have a question here. I need to submit a proposal now. How do I do it? So right now, just stick with eProtocol. As Zach was explaining, the IRB staff is planning to transition everything that is reviewed and approved, or at least submitted, before the freeze date, which is going to be in the middle of March. I think the 19th is the plan. So as long as you are ready to submit before the 19th, the eProtocol is still going to be your system of record. So go ahead and stay with that. We will transition everything, even if it's, right after approval, we'll transition that into Kuali for you. If you would like to, test with the system, we do have some options, I think, to have people do a dual submission, one in eProtocol and Kuali, and give us feedback. That's by no means required, but if you're interested, please do let us know about that. Yeah, and how does eProtocol work? For those of you who have not used it for IRB, it's very similar. It's a submission and management portal, basically. So the way it works is you log in with your CSU EID and password for your credentials, and it gives you the options to choose an IRB form, which then collects information that we would need to approve a protocol for you based on a number of different criteria. So if any of you had used eProtocol for IACUC in the past, it's very similar to that. And you just go ahead and submit your form. It would get sent out for review to committee members from our side of the portal. And then if we have questions or anything for you, then we'll send it back to you through the system with those questions outlined. And you can resubmit directly through eProtocol, back and forth as many times as needed to kind of get everything cleared up. And then the approval is processed within that system. That's kind of the highest level overview, but we have a lot more detailed information. If you have, an exempt study or something that's going to full board, or if you have a lot of other, procedures that might need approvals from different review committees like the IBC or IACUC, we would be happy to help you. So if you have other detailed questions, feel free to reach out to the IRB team and we'd be happy to work with you. Yep, and then Angie put a link for eProtocol into the chat. So you could definitely just go log in there and take a look. Anybody else have questions at this point? My other IRB team members, do you guys have anything that you want to add?
Hey, this is Tammy. I just want to add that I know a lot of researchers will be concerned about what our prioritization will be during the 2-week pause while we're transitioning. We are currently internally working on our triage of priorities for protocols that we have currently in eProtocol and moving over to the Kuali system. We will be communicating notifications out to all active research protocols and the research staff, so that way they're aware of our transition. We certainly just want to let you know that we know that it impacts you as well as ourselves, and we want to make sure that we make that as seamless as possible. So like Claire and Zach had said, we're going to have that website up. We'll be keeping that updated, as well as hopefully really utilizing the eProtocol's auto email notification process to give you an idea of when and where we're going to be transitioning your protocols on and after March 19th. And I know Claire will let us all know if I just completely misspoke.
Don't worry, you didn't misspeak. That's perfect.
Yep.
And this is Angie, and I just would want to add that even though we're all remote working, we're very accessible via email or a phone call.
Definitely. And we do appreciate your time a lot this morning. I know it's always hard on a Monday morning to get into this when you want to have a bunch of other stuff you need to get going. So we do appreciate your time. As Claire mentioned, Tammy and Angie mentioned, feel free to reach out to us at any time. I expect to have the website up on the RICRO page or on the IRB page here shortly with some additional information, links to training requests. As Claire mentioned, if you do get a chance to fool around, play in the sandbox, we do appreciate some sort of semi-structured feedback. That would be super helpful. That's all I have this morning. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your Monday.
Thank you.